The first step in creating a carbon print is to make a photographic emulsion called tissue, from which the print will be made. Tissue is made from a mixture of water, photographic gelatin, sugar, pigment, and a light-sensitive salt. It is poured over a sheet of plastic, then dried. Watercolor paper is the most common substrate or support used for a carbon print. But first, it must be sized with gelatin in order for the image to adhere. Regulating the amount of gelatin used gives control over gloss in the final print. Double transfers are made by first transferring to a temporary support, then to paper. They were traditionally made to maintain the orientation of the original scene, but are still made today for color, multi-layer black and white prints, and those working with in-camera negatives. Multi-layer double transfer prints require the use of a dimensionally stable temporary support for the image. This is a plastic sheet which has been coated with egg whites and hardened. 3 negatives are used to make a print. Starting with the digital file, the image is split into shadows, midtones, and highlights. These files are then inverted and printed. Since the image is going to be printed in layers, a system must be used to keep those layers in perfect registration. The negatives are aligned on a light table under a glass plate and taped to a sheet of clear plastic. Registration marks ensure that each layer is perfectly aligned. Holes are punched in the negatives, temporary support, and tissue, corresponding to registration pins used throughout the process. The tissue for the shadows is clipped on a board emulsion up, covered with a clear film, and the negative for the shadows is laid emulsion down over the tissue. The clear film prevents the negative from sticking to the tissue. A vacuum frame keeps the negative and tissue in tight contact throughout the exposure. The tissue is then exposed with ultraviolet light. Where light can pass through the negative, the gelatin is hardened. Likewise, unexposed parts of the tissue remain unhardened and will wash away during development. The tissue gets a quick soak in a cold bath and excess water is removed. A slight relief of the image can be seen at this point, but the unexposed gelatin needs to be washed away in hot water. Since the image is on top of a layer of unexposed gelatin, if put directly in hot water, the image will simply wash away. The solution to this is to flip the image over by transferring it to either paper or a temporary support. The albumin-coated temporary support is clipped onto registration pins and rolled on a bed of water into place. This is repeated with the exposed tissue. The sandwich is placed in hot water and the white tissue is peeled away, leaving the image on the clear plastic temporary support. After a few minutes of development, the unexposed gelatin washes away, leaving a beautiful image containing the dark tones of the print. To achieve the midtones and highlights, negatives for each tonal range are exposed on another tissue. The tissue is wetted as before and rolled in perfect registration on top of the first shadow layer. Upon development, the entire tonal range of the image is revealed. The light-sensitive salt is still in the print and will change colors when exposed to light. This needs to be removed and is done with an oxidizing bath and another containing an antioxidant. Doing this step while the image is on the plastic sheet instead of on the final support ensures the paper remains chemically pure. Next is my favorite part of the process, as it is the first time I get to see the image on its final support. A sheet of gelatin-sized paper is soaked in water for a few minutes, then brought into contact underwater with the image on the temporary support. The print is hung to dry, and then the plastic sheet can be peeled away, leaving the image on the paper. At this point, the print has a smooth, glossy appearance and needs to be soaked in water for a few minutes. While drying, the photo takes on the texture of the paper as the gelatin conforms to the individual cotton fibers. Once dried, the print is trimmed to size, pressed for a few days, packaged, and is sent to the client.